The Hogwarts Express journey. The Hogwarts Express chugged along through the English countryside, its scarlet steam engine pulling carriage after carriage of chattering students toward their magical destination. Harry pressed their face to the window of their compartment, watching the landscape blur past while trying to process everything that had happened at King's Cross Station. Now, settled into a compartment with Rahmed Ulwazer, Harry was beginning to think that maybe, just maybe, the wizarding world might be different. So, Rahmed said, settling back into his seat and adjusting his prayer cap, "My mother says you're starting Hogwarts too." "First year." "Yeah," Harry replied, still feeling slightly surreal about the entire situation. "This is all pretty overwhelming, to be honest." Rahmed grinned, revealing straight white teeth. "Tell me about it." "I've grown up knowing about magic, but actually going to school for it." "That's different." He glanced at his watch, a simple affair that Harry noticed was set to show prayer times along with regular hours. "Only to do dear in about 2 hours. Hope the train has somewhere quiet I can pray." Harry blinked. "You just mentioned that so casually." "Why wouldn't I?" Rahmed looked genuinely puzzled. "It's part of who I am. 5 times a day, every day. Has been since I was 7 and decided I was ready to commit properly." He tilted his head curiously. "Is that weird to you?" "No, not weird," Harry said quickly. "Just refreshing, I guess. My family, the people I live with, they act like anything that makes you different is something to be ashamed of." Rahmed's expression darkened slightly. One of those families." He leaned forward, his voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. "Let me guess, they think being different is some sort of disease that can be cured with enough disapproval and forceful normalcy." Harry stared at him. "That's exactly right." "How did you?" "Because I've dealt with it too, just from a different angle," Rahmed said with a rueful smile. "You wouldn't believe some of the things people have said to my family. Everything from go back where you came from to you're oppressing your women to asking my mother if she's being forced to dress the way she does." He rolled his eyes. "As if Mama couldn't hex someone into next week if she wanted to. She chose to cover because it makes her feel closer to Allah, not because anyone's making her." Harry felt a warm flash of recognition. "People always think they know better than you do about your own life." "Exactly." Rahmed's eyes lit up. "So what's your story? If you don't mind me asking." "Mama always says that people who look like they're carrying heavy burdens usually are." Harry took a deep breath. They told the Dursleys they'd survived the disaster, and Rahmed seemed genuinely kind. "I'm transgender," they said, watching carefully for Rahmed's reaction. Rahmed nodded thoughtfully. "Ah, that explains the careful pronoun checking." "They them." "Yeah." Harry felt some of the tension leave their shoulders. "You're taking this very well." "Why wouldn't I?" Rahmed shrugged. "Allah made all of us exactly as we're meant to be. Who am I to question that? Besides," he grinned, "my cousin Layla transitioned 3 years ago. Family was confused at first, but love wins out over confusion pretty quickly when you actually care about someone." Harry felt something tight in their chest begin to loosen. "Your family sounds amazing." "They are, Alan Julilla. Not perfect, we've got our share of drama and arguments, but we support each other." Rahmed's expression grew more serious. "What about yours? Are they not supportive?" Harry let out a bitter laugh. "That's putting it mildly. My Uncle Vernon thinks I'm mentally ill. My Aunt Pagia thinks it's a phase that can be cured with enough cooking lessons and feminine activities. And my cousin Dudley just thinks I'm doing it for attention." "That's rough, Archie," Rahmed said sympathetically. "But you know what? You're going to Hogwarts now. 7 years away from that kind of negativity, surrounded by people who are learning that magic comes in all forms." He paused. "Well, hopefully. I mean, wizards can be just as prejudiced as muggles, unfortunately." "Great," Harry muttered. "More people to disappoint with my existence." "Hey," Rahmed said firmly, "your existence isn't disappointing anyone worth knowing." And anyone who has a problem with it can take it up with me, inshallah. Before Harry could respond to this unexpected offer of protection, the compartment door slid open with a sharp bang. Has anyone seen a toad? A boy named Neville's lost, oh. The girl who'd burst in stopped mid-sentence, taking in Harry and Rahmed with sharp, analytical eyes. She was about their age, with bushy brown hair and an expression that suggested she was constantly thinking about 17 things at once. I haven't seen a toad, Rahmed said politely. But you're welcome to check under the seats if you'd like. Thank you, but I've already checked this entire car twice. The girl stepped fully into the compartment, and Harry noticed she was wearing a pin that read "Smash the Patriarchy" in bold letters. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way. First year. You? Rahmed al-Waziri, Rahmed replied with a slight nod. And this is Harry. Harry Potter, Harry added, then immediately regretted it as Hermione's eyes widened. The Harry Potter? The one who survived you know who. Hermione's voice took on an excited edge. I've read about you in The Rise and Fall of the Dark Arts and Great Wizarding Events of the 20th Century, Anne. I really wish people would stop doing that, Harry interrupted. I don't remember any of it. If I was a baby. Hermione had the grace to look slightly abashed. Sorry. I love learning about magical history, and you're such an important figure. I'm just a person, Harry said firmly. A person who'd prefer to be known for who they are now, not what happened to them as an infant. Of course, absolutely, Hermione said quickly. What pronouns do you use? Harry blinked in surprise. That was twice in one day. Apparently the wizarding world was more progressive than they'd dared hope. They, them. Noted. Hermione settled into the seat across from them without invitation, her expression shifting into what Harry was already recognizing as her lecture mode. It's so refreshing to meet someone who's openly challenging gender norms. The entire concept of gender is really just a social construct designed to maintain patriarchal power structures, you know. Rahmed raised an eyebrow. That's certainly one perspective. It's not a perspective, it's fact, Hermione said with the confidence of someone who had clearly spent considerable time thinking about this topic. The gender binary is a tool of oppression used to keep people in neat little boxes that serve the interests of those in power, primarily cisgender, heterosexual men who benefit from maintaining the status quo. Harry and Rahmed exchanged glances. I mean, Harry said carefully, I do think gender roles can be restrictive, but... Exactly. Hermione leaned forward enthusiastically. And it's not just gender roles, it's the entire system. The expectation that people with certain anatomy must behave in certain ways, must want certain things, must fulfill certain societal functions. It's all designed to perpetuate male dominance and female subjugation. Okay, Rahmed said slowly, but what about people who do genuinely identify with traditional gender roles? Are they just wrong? Hermione waved a dismissive hand. They've been conditioned by patriarchal messaging. No one in a truly free society would choose to conform to such restrictive binaries if they hadn't been brainwashed from birth. Harry felt a flicker of irritation. So you're saying that anyone who identifies as traditionally masculine or feminine is just brainwashed? Not brainwashed, Hermione corrected, conditioned. There's a difference. But yes, essentially. The patriarchy is incredibly insidious in how it shapes our understanding of ourselves from the moment we are born. Pink for girls, blue for boys, dolls versus trucks, nurturing versus aggressive, it's all arbitrary nonsense designed to maintain power imbalances. What about my mother? Rahmed asked quietly. She chooses to cover, she enjoys traditional homemaking, she finds fulfillment in caring for her family. Are you saying she's been brainwashed? Hermione's expression faltered slightly. Well, that's more complicated because of religious and cultural factors. So it's only brainwashing when it's Western women making traditional choices. Rahmed's tone was mild, but Harry caught the edge beneath it. That's not what look, internalized misogyny affects all women, regardless of culture, Hermione said, her cheeks reddening. The fact that women have been convinced that their oppression is actually their choice doesn't make it less oppressive. Right, Harry said, feeling increasingly uncomfortable with the direction of this conversation. So basically, any woman who doesn't agree with your analysis is just too oppressed to know better. You're oversimplifying. Am I? Harry crossed their arms. Because it sounds like you're saying that your way of understanding gender and society is the only correct way, and anyone who disagrees is just suffering from false consciousness. Hermione opened her mouth, then closed it, looking genuinely conflicted for the first time since she'd entered the compartment. Ramad leaned back in his seat. Look, I'm not saying patriarchy isn't real or that gender-based oppression doesn't exist. But maybe the solution isn't to declare that everyone who doesn't fit your model of liberation is just confused. I never said that, Hermione said, though she sounded less certain than before. You kind of did, Harry pointed out gently. And honestly? It reminds me a lot of how my relatives talk about me being transgender. They're convinced they know better than I do about my own identity, and any evidence to the contrary is just proof that I've been corrupted by outside influences. Hermione stared at them, her face cycling through a series of expressions. I see what you mean. An awkward silence settled over the compartment, broken only by the rhythmic clacking of the train wheels on the tracks. I'm sorry, Hermione said finally. You're right. I was being presumptuous. And probably a bit condescending. A bit? Ramad asked with a slight smile. Okay, very condescending, Hermione admitted with a rueful laugh. It's just, I get so passionate about these issues, and I've read so much theory, and sometimes I forget that real people are more complicated than academic frameworks. Harry felt their irritation beginning to fade. I get it. You care about justice and equality. That's admirable. But maybe listen to people's actual experiences instead of telling them what their experiences mean. That's fair, Hermione nodded. Can we start over? Sure, Harry said. I'm Harry, I use they/them pronouns, and I'm transgender. I also think gender is complicated and personal, and people should be free to express themselves however feels authentic to them. I'm Ramad, I use he/him pronouns, I'm Muslim, and I believe Allah made each of us exactly as we are meant to be, Ramad added. I also think that respecting people's choices, even when we don't understand them, is more important than being ideologically pure. Hermione took a deep breath. I'm Hermione, I use she/her pronouns, I'm still figuring out my sexuality but definitely queer, and I'm passionate about fighting oppression in all its forms. I also apparently need to work on not being a know-it-all who steamrolls over other people's perspectives. We all have things to work on, Harry said diplomatically. So, Ramad said, clearly trying to steer the conversation toward safer waters, what are you most excited about at Hogwarts? The library, Hermione said immediately, then caught herself. Sorry, is that too stereotypical bookworm of me? Only if you think being a bookworm is a bad thing, Harry replied. I'm excited about, well, everything, really. Learning magic, being somewhere I might actually fit in, getting away from people who think my existence is a personal affront to the natural order. That's not too much to ask for, Ramad said sympathetically. I'm excited about transfiguration. The idea that you can change the fundamental nature of something just by understanding it well enough and having enough willpower, there's something beautiful about that. Harry looked at him with new interest. That's a lovely way to think about it. What can I say? I'm a poet at heart, Ramad grinned. Much to my father's despair. He keeps hoping I'll develop an interest in the family business. Which is? Importing magical carpets and flying apparatus from the Middle East, Ramad said. Legitimate business, completely above board, though you wouldn't know it from the way the ministry treats us. Apparently having an Arabic surname automatically makes you suspicious. Hermione frowned. That's terrible. And completely racist. Welcome to being a minority in magical Britain, Ramad said with a shrug that didn't quite hide his bitterness. At least at Hogwarts I'll just be another student, right? Harry and Hermione exchanged glances, both apparently thinking the same thing, if only it were that simple. I hoped so, Harry said. Though I have a feeling we're all going to stand out whether we want to or not. True, Hermione said. You because of your fame, Rahmed because. She gestured vaguely. Because I'm brown and Muslim in a predominantly white, Christian society. Rahmed supplied dryly. I was going to say because you're obviously intelligent and thoughtful, but yes, unfortunately, probably that too. And you'll stand out because you're brilliant and unafraid to show it, Harry told Hermione. Plus the whole feminist thing. Is being a feminist really that unusual? Hermione asked. Calling out patriarchy in your first conversation with strangers might be, Rahmed pointed out with amusement. Hermione winced. Point taken. The train began to slow, and Harry glanced out the window to see they were pulling into a small station. A few older students got off to stretch their legs and buy snacks from a cart, but most remained in their compartments. How long is this journey? Harry asked. Several more hours, Rahmed replied, checking his watch again. Which reminds me, I need to find somewhere to pray soon. Do you think they'd mind if I used part of this compartment? Why would we mind? Harry asked, genuinely puzzled. Some people get uncomfortable around religious practices they don't understand, Rahmed said with a slight shrug. Or they think I'm being performative, or trying to make a statement. The only statement you'd be making is that you take your faith seriously, Hermione said firmly. Which is admirable. Thanks. Rahmed smiled. You know, when I was worried about making friends at Hogwarts, I wasn't expecting to find people who were so understanding. Maybe that's because we all know what it's like to be misunderstood, Harry suggested. Probably, Hermione agreed. Though I should warn you both, I have a tendency to lecture people about social justice issues. It's apparently very annoying. Only when you assume you know better than the people you're trying to help, Rahmed said gently. Passion for justice is good. Assuming you have all the answers, less good. I'm working on it, Hermione said. My parents say I need to learn the difference between being right and being helpful. Your parents sound wise, Harry said. They are. They're dentists, muggles, and they've been incredibly supportive about the whole magic thing. Even bought me extra books so I could learn about wizarding culture before starting school. Hermione's expression grew more serious. What are your families like? Harry and Rahmed exchanged glances again. My family's amazing, Rahmed said. Supportive, loving, chaotic in the best way. My parents have been nothing but encouraging about Hogwarts, even though it means I'll be the first Al-Waziri to attend a British wizarding school instead of studying abroad. That sounds wonderful, Hermione said wistfully, then turned to Harry. What about yours? Harry was quiet for a long moment. The people I live with aren't really my family, they said finally. They're my relatives, but they don't understand me. Don't want to understand me. They think I'm broken or confused or going through a phase. That's their loss, Rahmed said firmly. And their failure, not yours. I know that intellectually, Harry said. It's just hard sometimes, feeling like the people who are supposed to love you see you as a problem to be solved instead of a person to be supported. Hermione leaned forward, her expression earnest. You know what? We'll be your family at Hogwarts. When we, Rahmed. Absolutely, Rahmed nodded. Found family is just as valid as biological family. Sometimes more so. Harry felt their throat tighten with unexpected emotion. You barely know me. We know enough, Hermione said. We know you're brave enough to be yourself despite opposition. We know you're thoughtful and kind. We know you're willing to stand up for others. You defended Rahmed when I was being presumptuous about his mother. And we know you're going to need allies at Hogwarts, Rahmed added. Just like we will. So why not stick together? Harry looked at these two people, so different from each other, so different from Harry, and yet somehow exactly what they hadn't known they were looking for. Okay, they said softly. Yeah, I'd like that. The train whistle blew, signalling their departure from the station, and the Hogwarts Express resumed its journey north. But somehow, Harry felt like they'd already arrived at the most important destination, friendship. As Ron quietly began his afternoon prayers in the corner of the compartment and Hermione pulled out a book titled Magical Feminist Theory, A Critical Analysis, Harry settled back in her seat and watched the Scottish countryside roll past. For the first time in their life, Harry Potter felt like they might actually belong somewhere. Even if that somewhere was a magical school filled with unknown challenges and potential prejudices, at least they wouldn't be facing it alone. And that, Harry thought, made all the difference.